Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are pulling a file that, honestly, it feels like it's having a bit of an identity crisis.
That is a very polite way of putting it.
I mean, we're looking at a stack of sources here, mainly a Wikipedia entry for a man named Arizona Charlie. And if you just glance at the name, you think, okay, this is a character.
Right.
This is fiction, something from a dime store novel.
Does have that ring to it, Arizona Charlie. It sounds, manufactured for a poster.
Exactly. It sounds like he should be played by John Wayne or maybe animated on a vintage lunchbox. But our mission today is to dig past that dime novel cover because the man underneath, Abram Henson Meadows, was very real. And his life story isn't just a cowboy adventure. It's this really complex bridge between two completely different versions of America.
That's the part that hooked me on this deep dive.
Yeah.
You have this one figure who physically bridges the gap between the brutal, dusty reality of the frontier.
Like survival mode.
Survival mode, exactly. And the polished, ticket-selling spectacle of the Wild West show.
It's the transition from living the history to, well, selling the history.
Precisely. And he didn't just live through it. He was a key architect in how that history got packaged for everyone else.
But before we get to the show business, we have to deal with the fact that our source material is, well, it's a bit of a mess.
It's a puzzle.
It really is. We've got conflicting dates, we've got some very confusing grammar, and we have, real tragedy mixed with, see also links to casinos.
It's a perfect stub of history, just fragments of a life that we have to try and piece together.
So let's start at the very beginning, or I guess the two beginnings, because right off the bat, the source gives us a classic historical headache.
The birth date.
Yeah, when was this guy actually born?
Right, so if you look at the bold introduction text in the source, it states, very confidently, born March 10th, 1860. Case closed.
But then you just let your eyes drift down, 2 inches to the little info box on the right? And it says March 10th, 1859.
A full year discrepancy, just sitting there side by side.
And usually you'd expect the source to, mention that, but it just leaves it hanging.
Well, you have to remember the context. We're talking about Visalia, California in the mid-19th century. This isn't the digital age. Record keeping was, let's call it, aspirational.
Fuzzy is the word I was going to use.
Aspirational, fuzzy, it works. People were born at home. Records were handwritten. Sometimes they were lost in fires or floods. So the fact that we can't pin down his birth year is actually pretty telling of the world he was born into. It was a world on the margins.
And he wasn't exactly born into a quiet household where they could obsess over paperwork. The source notes he was the 6th of 12 children.
12 children. John Meadows Sr. was running a massive operation, just keeping that family fed.
Imagine the noise.
Yeah.
But speaking of the father, John Meadows Sr., this brings us to one of the most baffling sentences I have ever read. I mean, I had to read it 3 times.
I know exactly which one you're talking about, the one with the president.
Yes. Let me read this verbatim so you can share my confusion. The source says, after Abraham Lincoln became president, his father changed his name to Charles to move the family to a ranch in Diamond Valley north of Payson, Arizona.
There is so much packed into that one sentence. It's...
Okay, let's unpack it. His father changed his name to Charles. Who is the his and who is the Charles? Did John Meadows Sr. change his own name to Charles, or did he change the boy's name, Abram, to Charles?
Grammatically, it's a disaster. It's completely ambiguous. But if we look at the context, I mean, our subject is known to history as Arizona Charlie, not Arizona Abram.
Right.
So the logical leap is that the father changed the son's name.
Okay, that makes sense. But the why is the really juicy part. The text explicitly links this decision to after Abraham Lincoln became president.
And that is a huge clue about the political temperature of the room.
Why would Lincoln becoming president make a father change his son's name and move a family of 14 people to the middle of nowhere in Arizona?
Well, you have to look at the timeline. Lincoln's elected in 1860. The Civil War kicks off in 61. Now, California was a Union state, but it had a lot of Confederate sympathizers, especially in the southern agricultural parts like Visalia.
It was a tense place.
A very tense, divided place.
So you think the name Abram, which sounds a lot like Abraham, as in the president, might have been a liability?
It's possible. Or maybe it was the opposite. Maybe the father, John Sr., was a Confederate sympathizer who didn't want his son sharing a name with the Union president.
Or they were Union supporters in a Confederate-leaning town and just needed to get out.
Either way, it suggests that the name Abram was politically charged.
Right.
And the fact that they moved to Arizona territory, that is not a casual move. Moving to Arizona in the 1860s wasn't like retiring to Phoenix today. It was moving into a war zone.
It was an escape.
It was a reinvention. They were fleeing something,
Right.
politics, debt, social pressure, who knows. And they headed for the frontier where questions weren't asked.
But as the source makes very, very clear, the frontier had its own set of problems. And this brings us to the real turning point. If this was a movie, this would be the inciting incident.
The move to Diamond Valley.
Right. We jump forward to July 15th, 1882. The family is on this ranch in Arizona. Charlie is a young man now, 22, 23 years old.
And the source is incredibly blunt about what happens. It says John Meadows Sr., the patriarch, and Henry, the older brother, were killed.
And it doesn't just say killed in a skirmish, it names names. It says they were killed by a party of Sibicu Apaches led by Nasradish.
And we need to pause on those names because they anchor this in a very specific, very violent reality. The Sibicu Apaches were involved in a desperate struggle for their land. Nasradish was a significant leader who had led a breakout from the reservation.
So this wasn't a random crime, this was war.
It was. This raid was likely part of the prelude to the Battle of Big Dry Wash, which, historians mark as the last major battle between the U.S. Army and Apache warriors in Arizona.
Yeah.
So Charlie isn't just living in the West. He is at ground zero of the Apache Wars.
And look at the position he has left in. The source explicitly states that after his father and older brother were killed, he was left the man of the house.
That phrase carries so much weight. Man of the house.
He's barely into his 20s. He has just seen his father and brother die violently. And suddenly, he looks around, and he has his mother and 10 siblings looking back at him.
And they're in hostile territory. The threat hasn't gone away just because the funeral's over.
Talk about trauma. I mean, we throw that word around a lot today, but this is visceral survival trauma. He has to step up, defend the ranch, feed the kids, keep everyone alive.
It's a crushing amount of responsibility. And I think it's crucial to understand this moment because it defines everything that comes later. This isn't show business yet. This is about having a loaded rifle within arm's reach every second of the day.
It totally changes how you look at the name Arizona Charlie. Before he was a character, he was a survivor.
Yes. And usually when people go through something that horrific, they retreat, they move back to the city, they hunker down.
But Charlie didn't do that. And this is where the story pivots in a way that I find completely fascinating. The source says that in 1884, that is only 2 years after the murders.
2 years.
2 years. He's pivoting to public events.
That's a blink of an eye in terms of grieving.
He teams up with a guy named John C. Chilson, and they organize the Payson Rodeo.
In Payson, Arizona.
And the source makes a huge claim here. It says the Payson Rodeo claims to be America's oldest continuous rodeo.
So he didn't just throw a party. He founded an institution. But think about what a rodeo actually is. What are the events?
Bronc riding, roping, shooting.
Exactly. These are the skills of the ranch, the skills of survival. They're the exact same skills Charlie had to use to defend his family in 1882.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
In 1882, riding fast and shooting straight was a matter of life and death. If you missed, you died. But in 1884, just 2 years later, he takes those same skills and he puts them in an arena. He invites a crowd. He offers a prize.
He gamifies it.
He gamifies his own trauma. It's the beginning of the commodification of the West. He takes the hard, violent reality of his life and turns it into a sport.
That is a wild psychological pivot. It's like, here's the thing that kept me alive. Now watch me do it for applause.
It's a way of asserting control, isn't it?
Yeah.
In the real world, in Diamond Valley, chaos can strike at any moment. But in the rodeo arena, the cowboy is in charge, the rules are set, the good guy wins the belt buckle.
It's therapeutic in a way. Or I don't know, maybe just good business.
I think it's both. And it marks the moment where Abram Meadows starts to disappear and Arizona Charlie starts to take over. He's realizing that people are fascinated by the life he lives and they will pay to see a safe version of it.
And speaking of paying to see it, the source drops a massive name here. It says Charlie was a contemporary of, and I quote, Buffalo Bill Cody.
You really can't tell the story of the West without Buffalo Bill.
The source explicitly says that Buffalo Bill's Wild West show is what inspired Meadows to pursue a performing career.
And this confirms that shift we were just talking about. Buffalo Bill Cody was a genius at marketing. He took the frontier experience, the scouts, the Indians, the sharpshooting, and he packaged it for audiences in the East and in Europe. He turned the Wild West into a brand.
And Charlie saw that and thought, I can do that.
I am doing that.
Right, that's the difference. Buffalo Bill was a scout, sure, but he was a showman first. Charlie is fresh off the ranch. He's arguably closer to the raw reality of it.
And yet he modeled himself after the showman. He wanted the lights, The source lists his talents specifically: sharpshooter, Sherman, and sports trick shot artist.
Sports trick shot artist. I love that phrasing. It sounds so professional.
It does, but think about what a trick shot is. It's artificial difficulty. You know, shooting a target while looking at a mirror over your shoulder.
It's flair.
It's flair, but it's also a demonstration of absolute mastery. If you are the man of the house protecting 10 siblings, you need to be a good shot. But you don't shoot over your shoulder with a mirror. That's inefficient.
Right, you shoot to stop the threat.
But in the show, the gun becomes a magic wand. It stops being a tool of violence and becomes a tool of entertainment. It sanitizes the danger.
So just imagine the scene. You have this guy, Charlie, who lived through a massacre, and now he's dressing up in fringe and buckskins, traveling around and performing reenactments of frontier life.
It's a complex psychology. Was he reenacting a version of his own life? When he performed as a sharpshooter, was he just entertaining the crowd? Or was he proving to himself night after night that he was the protector that he wouldn't miss?
It's almost like he's rewriting history every time he enters the ring. In the show, the tragedy doesn't happen. The hero hits the target every time.
Exactly. The Wild West show allows you to control the narrative. You can take the messy, painful history of the Apache Wars and turn it into a thrilling spectacle where everyone takes a bow at the end.
So Charlie becomes this figure. He travels, he performs globally. The source mentions he went as far as Australia. He is Arizona Charlie, the legend.
He becomes a character in his own lifetime.
But the life of a showman isn't all applause. The source gives us a hint about the reality of his later years. There is a reference cited, and I have to read the title of this article because it is absolute gold.
Go ahead.
It's an article by Marshall Trimble in True West magazine from June 2018. The title is Fame, Fortune, and a Snowball's Chance in Hell.
That is evocative.
It really paints a picture, doesn't it?
It sums up the frontier showman perfectly. Fame and fortune suggest he reached the heights. But a snowball's chance in hell, that suggests the odds were always stacked against him.
It implies a life lived on the edge. High risk, high reward.
And likely, high loss.
Oh.
These guys were gamblers at heart. They made money when the show was hot and they lost it on bad investments or just trying to keep the show on the road. That title tells you he didn't die a quiet, boring millionaire.
No, he kept moving. And eventually, the show does end. The source tells us that Meadows died on December 9, 1932.
In Yuma, Arizona.
He was 73 years old.
Just pause and think about the arc of that life for a second.
Okay.
He is born in 1859 or 60. People are traveling by covered wagon. The telegraph is cutting-edge technology. The map of America is still being drawn.
Right.
And he dies in 1932. We have airplanes. We have movies with sound. We have the Great Depression. The modern world has arrived.
He saw the entire transformation. He saw the frontier when it was truly wild. He saw the closing of that frontier, and he saw the rise of the automobile and the beginnings of the Vegas Strip.
He didn't just see it. He embodied it. He started as a pioneer and ended as an entertainer.
But here's where it gets really interesting to me. The man died in 1932, but his name didn't.
No, it didn't.
The See Also section of the source lists two very specific things, and they aren't history books. They are Arizona Charlie's Boulder and Arizona Charlie's Decatur.
Now, the source doesn't explicitly define what these are. It just lists them as wiki links.
But if you've ever been to Las Vegas, or if you just look at the naming convention, Arizona Charlie's, that sounds like hospitality to me.
It is. They're hotels and casinos.
Which is just an incredible irony.
How so?
Well, think about it. We started with a man named Abram, whose father changed his name to avoid political trouble. A man who suffered a brutal, real-world tragedy in a canyon in Arizona. A man who fought to survive.
Yeah.
And now, nearly 100 years after his death, his name is on a neon sign inviting people to an all-you-can-eat buffet and slot machines.
It is the ultimate evolution of the Wild West myth, isn't it?
It really is.
We went from survival in 1882 to spectacle in the 1890s with the Wild West shows to purely branding in the modern era. Arizona Charlie ceased to be a person with a tragic past and became a logo.
It highlights how we process history in America. We take the rough edges off, we take the tragedy of the Sibique Apaches and the Meadows family, and we distill it down until it's just a vibe, a cool cowboy name to put on a building.
If you walked into Arizona Charlie's Decatur today and asked a person playing video poker, hey, did you know this place is named after a guy who watched his dad get killed by Natatish in 1882? They would look at you like you were crazy.
They absolutely would. I'm just here for the shrimp cocktail, buddy.
Exactly. But, you know, in a weird way, maybe that's what Arizona Charlie the man would have understood.
You think so.
He spent his whole adult life trying to turn his reality into entertainment. He understood the hustle. The casino was just the modern version of the Wild West show. It's bright lights, distraction, and a promise of a thrill.
Fame, fortune, and a snowball's chance in hell. That applies to a roulette wheel just as well as it applies to a cattle drive.
It certainly does.
But I want to give the man some credit, too, because while the casinos are a bit disconnected from his reality, the Payson Rodeo isn't.
That's true. That is the more authentic legacy.
The source says it claims to be the oldest continuous rodeo. That means every single year since 1884, people have gathered in Payson to do the things Charlie and his friend organized.
There is something beautiful about that consistency. Governments change, technologies change, wars happen, but people are still getting on horses in Payson.
It suggests that underneath the branding and the spectacle, there is a core respect for those skills. Charlie didn't just leave a logo, he left a community tradition.
He took the worst moment of his life, and he built something that has brought people together for 140 years. That's a powerful legacy.
So when we look at the stub of a Wikipedia entry, we aren't just looking at a few random dates. We are looking at a blueprint for how the West was won and then how it was sold.
We process history by performing it. We take the scary parts and we turn them into a show. Arizona Charlie was one of the first to realize, if I can perform this, I can control it.
And in doing so, he made himself immortal. Or at least he made his name immortal.
Which is more than most of us get.
Well, we have covered a lot of ground today. From the muddy birth records of Visalia to the tragic canyons of Diamond Valley and all the way to the bright neon lights of Las Vegas.
A bridge built on resilience, gunpowder, and a lot of showmanship.
A huge thank you to everyone for listening to this deep dive. We hope this little journey into the stub of history gave you something to think about.
It definitely makes you wonder what true stories are hiding behind the other brand names we see every day.
Oh, absolutely. And here is a final provocative thought for you to chew on. We know Charlie performed as a sharpshooter. When he was out there in the arena hitting those targets, was he celebrating the spirit of the West? Or was he, in some way, constantly reliving that day in 1882, trying to get the shots right this time?
That is a haunting thought.
It is. Go look into the stubs of history, everyone. You never know what you'll find. See you next time.